Hey, everybody, how are you? Welcome back to NJ Fire Guys podcast, run number 41 with Lieutenant Jim Aleski. Lieutenant Jim Aleski, a nearly 28-year veteran of the fire service, who currently serves as a lieutenant with the Cherry Hill Fire Department. Jim's fire service career began in 1997 as a volunteer with the Melrose Hose Company in Sayreville, New Jersey, where he served for over 12 years. Before joining Cherry Hill Fire Department in 2007. Outside of the fire service, Jim brings a unique perspective from his decade-long career in the film and television industry. He's leveraged his media expertise into the fire service, working as a branding and content specialist for NEP services, serving as communications director for the PFA&J, and managing social media presence for the Cherry Hills IAFF locals 2663 and 3198. Jim has a bachelor's degree in mass communications from Emerson College and a master's degree in fire and emergency management administration from Oklahoma State University. He is also a sought-after speaker, sharing insights on media engagement and social networking tools for the emergency service agencies at conferences and on podcasts. Without further interruption, I am proud to present Lieutenant Jim Aleski. Hey, brother, how are you tonight?
Hey, thanks for having me on. I don't know how sought after I am, but I'm excited to be here with you tonight. That picture,
I'm excited to have you.
That was long ago from Sayreville Fire Department. I remember that fire. It was about 100 degrees.
I was going to say you look tired and hot.
It was literally directly across the street from my aunt's house. And yes, it was about 100 degrees that day. We saved a dog, if I'm not mistaken. But that was a long time ago. I drove there on the engine by myself, in fact.
Driver only.
Driver only. I drove there, jumped off, and a whole bunch of guys met on scene. And next thing I know, I was in the house, not driving anymore. But I drove there alone to that fire.
We've all been there.
So,
and then here's another oldie goodie here.
Yeah, that's even way before. That was when I was very skinny, as you can see. And I want to say that was maybe weeks after I joined the fire service. So actually, that would have been, if that was Fire Prevention Week, I guess that would have been in the fall. I joined the fire service in April of 1997. So I'm going to guess that was probably September, October of 1997. So that was a long time ago.
All right. So where'd you grow up? What brought you to fire service?
So I grew up in Sayreville. I lived in the Melrose section of Sayreville, which most people probably wouldn't know where that is, but most people in the fire service in New Jersey have actually been in that neighborhood, because that's the neighborhood where the Middlesex County Fire Academy is. So by as a crow flies, I literally grew up a couple hundred yards. In fact, most of the time I grew up there, the fire academy wasn't even there. I think it opened maybe right around when I started high school. But I grew up right there in Sayreville. Firehouse was just a couple blocks down the street. So I grew up always, you hear the horn going off. And then a couple minutes later, you heard the sirens going. And I think that was part of what hooked me. I grew up also across the street from a New York City fire captain who somehow lived most of his career in New Jersey, using different families. Allegedly using different. He always had New York plates, but always lived in New Jersey. But I grew up directly across the street from him. So I mean, it was always something I got to see, or get a taste of, just right in my neighborhood as a little kid. And I had a moment, I don't know, I guess I was a teenager, and I was at another family member's house. And I had given him, he had gotten, it's my younger cousin Joey, he had gotten lots of my toys growing up. And we went there, and I was like, man, Joey, like you have a lot of fire trucks. And his mom said, well, those were all yours. They all came from you. And that hit me. I was like, wow. And so Yeah, so I remember, going back almost as long as I can remember. My aunt gave me a fire helmet when I was little. I put it on my head. I got the garden hose in the backyard, and I went into the family room and I hosed down the room. So I've been running as an engine man since probably I was 4 or 5 years old. So it's been
I
a
love
long
it.
time.
I love it.
So yeah. So I grew up in Sayreville. Graduated Sayreville High School. I always wanted to join the fire department, but I went away to college, and kind of, in my mind, debated, do I want to be a career firefighter, or do I want to go into what I ended up going into? I wanted to go into radio way back in the day. But that kind of morphed into film and television. So I kind of always thought, all right, let me go off to college. When I was in high school, we had a fantastic television program, and I got hooked in that right in high school. Learned how to shoot video, edit video, do all kinds of things behind the scenes in TV. So I went off to college to study film. And I kind of thought, well, hey, if I get back to New Jersey, wherever I end up, I'm going to join the volunteer fire service, and I'll kind of have the best of both worlds. I'll work in the media business, I'll volunteer on the side, and life will be good. And that's what I did for a long time. I did that for over a decade. I worked in television. I started as a production assistant. Worked my way up to being the executive producer of a small, medium-sized production and post-production company. And when I was home, a lot of times I worked from home. So hence why I would be a guy driving an engine by myself to a fire in the middle of, a Tuesday morning in July. But I was around a lot. Or if I was traveling, which happened a lot too, I would find the fire service was kind of, I used to say it was like my therapy, like working high pressure media business. And you walk into the firehouse, and it was like, I used to joke, it was like getting hit in the face with a pie, like you'd have this stressful day at work, and then you go in the firehouse, and it's, all bets are off. And that I thought always helped me. But I also thought it was a good, they kind of complemented each other. I worked on, like, I worked on sets. So, you have a bunch of crews that your crew shows up, you make something, you go home. Everyone has a specialization. Everyone has specific jobs. It's a highly coordinated, kind of 3-ring circus. Not a whole lot different than a fire scene. The pace on the fire scene is obviously higher. Time is not on our side.
Yeah.
But the division of tasks, communicating in
Everybody's got a role.
Everybody's got a role. All those roles need to happen kind of simultaneously. And somebody's got to, keep the chaos in order. And so the mindsets in both of those things, I found, oddly similar.
Okay.
And so in that side of things, I think both jobs sort of complemented each other and made me better. I've things I learned in film and media that I have made me better at certain things in the fire service. Certainly certain things in the fire service I learned, dealing with compressed time and kind of chaotic situations certainly helped me in the opposite direction in the media world. So,
yeah.
So I did that. That was my life for over a decade. Volunteering as much as I can, or if I was working from home, volunteering quite a bit. And working in film and television. I mostly made television commercials for a living, big kind of national things. We did TV network branding campaigns, worked with a ton of celebrities, traveled a lot. But as time kind of went along, I kind of tired of working in that field. I think I was certainly influenced by 9/11 and by Hurricane Katrina and all these things. And I kind of was like, do I want to work in television, for the rest of my life, or do I want to, maybe, make firefighting my main career? And so as I kind of was approaching, passing my 30th birthday in the state of New Jersey, the clock is obviously ticking.
Yeah.
So I said, well, let me take a stab at this before it's too late. And I even said, I could get hired someplace, and if after a year or two it's not for me, I can go back to my old world and they wouldn't even know I ever left.
Yeah.
So I was still volunteering in Sayreville, and I got hired as a part-time firefighter in Monroe Township in District 3. Worked with
Yellow trucks.
another handsome guy with the last name Palumbo. But
He's not handsome.
he's not handsome.
It's-
Yes, yellow trucks. Never quite understood that whole history. That could be a podcast in itself.
Right.
But I worked there, and got me a taste of kind of the career service. And I worked there.
So you worked there, and you still decided that you wanted to do this.
I did. And the only issue was, which, I owned a house. I lived in South Amboy. I lived like 200 yards over the border from Sayreville, where I still volunteered, but I did live in South Amboy. I was married. My wife had a real job. Like I couldn't just pick up and move.
Yeah.
So then that sort of limited where I could look for other full-time employment.
Now, real quick, what did she think of you making such a dramatic? Like, obviously, she knew your passion. You had a passion for firefighting, but let's face facts.
I think the only thing I think the one thing that saved me was my previous career as a freelancer in film and television was way less. My schedule was way less predictable than it could ever be as a firefighter. Even you throw in overtime, even now, like I have meetings, committees, overtime, voluntary overtime, forced overtime, like throwing all those things. At least like she could look at my schedule now and know a year out when I'm working, when I'm off. Whereas in my old world, I could be finishing up a project, think, okay, cool, I got a week or so off. The phone could ring, and it could be like, yo, man, can you be in Mexico in 72 hours? Which of course the answer to that is always yes, I can be in Mexico in 72 hours. So, I think in that regard, some of the stability, some of the predictability of schedules, was appealing. And
especially having a young family.
Yeah, we didn't have kids yet at that point. But so I mean, I took a massive pay cut. That was challenging. And when I first got on the job in Cherry Hill, I worked EMS on the side for about 2 years, just because I literally couldn't even make my car payment, because my change in income was so drastic. But that was fine. Like it was something I wanted to do. So, Cherry Hill, as a Title 40 town, not as a civil service town, didn't have residency requirements. So I took the test, which sounds like you may have taken the same test.
I believe I did.
That I took.
Because I want to say there was like 2 years, or like a 2 or 3 year span that they had 2 tests. Because I want to say I tested there twice in like a real brief period.
There was a period, like back when I got hired, at the same time kind of your brother came on the job in Monroe, like there was nobody hiring in New Jersey. Like the cities weren't hiring. They were all,
a lot of places were laying off.
Places were laying off. And while Cherry Hill was only hiring a handful of guys here and there at a time, they kind of never, in that period of time, they never stopped hiring. They never stopped testing. Yeah. So, so I was incredibly lucky. I don't take that for granted that I was lucky to get on when I did. So I did get hired in 2007. Before we came on the air, I was telling you that the day of the test, which was in December of 2006, I literally took the written test that morning, and I drove to Manhattan that afternoon and did a shoot with Beyonce and Jamie Foxx. Which is crazy to think now, but the only time I ever worked with Beyonce was the day I took the Cherry Hill test. But a couple months later, I find out that I had an employment offer, and in September of 2007, I joined the fire service in April of '97. That's when I went in Sayreville, and a little over 10 years later, I kind of switched hats and became career in Cherry Hill, and I've been there since.
That's awesome. So give us a little rundown of the we had a little bit of it with Chief Riley, but
Okay.
what's the makeup of Cherry Hill Fire Department now, and the city, the town itself? Because I mean, it's been growing as long
Yeah.
as I've known it.
Yeah. Cherry Hills is now one of the fastest growing towns in New Jersey. I think it's over the last 5+ years. It's been in the top 3 or 4 fastest growing towns. We're approaching, if we're not there already, about 80,000 residents. Um, and
How big is it?
it's 24 square miles.
Okay.
So it's not small, but it's not huge. And it's one of those weird places. New Jersey, we have these big townships. Cherry Hill, Edison, Hamilton, Brick, Toms River, and in any other state in America, these would be cities. But in New Jersey, they're just they're towns, they're suburbs.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of characteristics of suburbs. We have big neighborhoods just full of single family homes and townhomes and things like that. But we also have characteristics of cities. We have a very high. We have over 3,000 people per square mile. Which I like to say, half the cities in America that had NFL teams don't have 3,000 people per square mile.
Yeah.
So the only thing limiting our size is that we're just 24 square miles. So
And
but
they
we
haven't
have
started building up yet.
well, they have. Yeah, I mean that. Well, that's
I mean, they
sort of
are,
the
but
transition we're in now. I mean, Cherry Hill's always had some high rises. Our biggest ones are 18 stories.
yeah.
But we're now becoming the land of the 5 over 1. We're becoming, we're just having, we have
Mhm.
dozens and dozens and dozens of these apartment buildings, and as soon as they build them, whether they're rentals or they're townhomes, they're full. And they're building more, and there's kind of no end in sight. So that's kind of exciting, for the fire department. It's making us kind of more indispensable than ever. It's increasing our run volume, but it's also forcing us to sort of change, from being a department that historically was a single family dwelling responding fire department. We're now much more diverse in what we respond to. Our fires are still statistically mostly in single family dwellings, but our buildings are different, and our run volume is much more diverse. So
and you look at
like
you guys have a big hiring, it looks like, coming up over the course of that 25-year career. If you're getting hired now, the new buildings now are going to be old buildings.
Sure.
And a lot, possibly the way that town is growing, a lot of those single family homes are now going to be getting built up, and
I mean,
their
or whatever
entire dynamic of their career.
And that's so we're a 6-station fire department. We have 4 engine companies, 2 ladders, essentially. 3 of the engines are pretty straightforward, regular engine companies. One has a squirt boom on it, but and one of our engines is a squad company. They're kind of a light rescue as well. They cover the highways, but they also staff a hazmat unit, and that hazmat unit covers the entire county. And one of our ladders is we call it Rescue Ladder 13. It is a rescue / ladder company who also staff a USAR unit. The technical rescue side of that covers the entire county. We're the county technical rescue team is us, Camden and Winslow. We run together on all technical rescue incidents. And then we do USAR, and USAR, we can go really all over the place. We'll go as far as Cape May. We even work, I think, with Cape May and Camden counties. I think are kind of married up. When the balcony collapsed in Sea Isle City, it was our guys. We responded to that. So we cover a very wide area. We have I think last year we were just over 17,000 runs. So EMS is part of the fire department. So in addition to the 6 staffed fire units, we have between 3 and 5 ambulances on.
But that's separate staffing, right?
So that's separate staffing. So we have we're all in the same uniforms, the same patch, running out of the same firehouses, same logos on the rig. Firefighters don't staff ambulances. EMS side doesn't staff fire trucks. every uniformed employee of the fire department is at least an EMT. We do have a good number of paramedics as well. But the ambulances are staffed by our EMS division personnel, which is a mix of full timers and per diems. But the fire trucks go on certain criteria EMS runs, or we go on EMS runs if there's no ambulances available, which happens quite a bit. So we're a an all hazards agency. We're obviously responding to fires, we're responding to EMS runs. We're responding to hazmat runs, USAR, technical rescue. We're part of OEM. It's a pretty robust, agency. We kind of run like a city department, even though we're covering a quote unquote township.
Yeah. Well, again, like you said, the demographics meet that
require
a city.
Yeah.
Meet that of a city.
Like I said, we got everything but like an airport and a zoo. We have interstates, we have high rises, we have mid rises. We don't have a ton of industrial. We have some chemical. We have a pharmaceutical plant. We have a chemical plant. Not a ton of heavy industry. There's a bit of light industries, all over the place. But we have highways. We have one heavy rail line. We have a subway, elevated subway in Cherry Hill. We have the high speed line, the Patco line. Runs from Cherry Hill.
Yeah, that is Cherry Hill.
And goes, it goes underground once it goes into Camden and then runs underground in Philly. But it's above ground in Cherry Hill, but it's essentially a subway. So we're starting to get some warehouses. We don't have enough property to be in the sort of warehouse boom that's all over New Jersey. But we have gotten our first couple of the tilt slab up warehouses, so that's kind of new for us. And then big apartment, big multifamily residential is our big kind of boom right now. We have our one complex where the horse race track in Cherry Hill used to be. We have I think about 50 mid rises there now, residential mid rises that are a mix of different age restrictions and rentals, condos, and things like that. So it's been interesting. It's been an interesting change even in the 17, 18 years that I've been on the job.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's wild. It's fun.
And you guys do a lot of, not even just like technical rescue and hazmat. You guys do a lot of structural mutual aid and auto aid with Camden, Voorhees, Evesham, I think, right?
So Camden County, to its credit, is light years ahead of. And I always joke, that's like the guys that I work with complain about, our dispatching and our dispatchers sometimes and the system. Yeah. I tell them, as somebody from who has worked in other counties, who's familiar with the way things go, it's light years ahead of maybe everywhere else in New Jersey. So we have just having this conversation with somebody today, maybe this morning. It may just feel like forever ago, but every place I've ever been, firemen and cops are complaining about dispatch, but like you never, like you sit there and you're like, oh my God, but then you hear somebody else's dispatch center talk and you're like, oh my God, how do they know what is going on? Like, my wife always jokes. My wife, like when we're on the phone and she just hears a dispatch, she's like, how do you know what they're saying? And you spend enough time in the firehouse and it just becomes background noise. You know certain things to certain units or certain words to listen to. But if you don't hear those key words, you just ignore it. It's just background noise. But Camden County has a centralized dispatch center. Pretty much almost every police department. I think Cherry Hill Police is maybe one of the only ones still not, and I think maybe Gloucester Township are the only two like emergency agencies in the whole county that aren't dispatched by the central dispatch system. All fire and EMS are dispatched by it. We're grouped together geographically, so you're pretty much sure that everyone kind of around you're all going to be on the same channel, and so you can hear what's going on with each other. We have automatic aid. We run, the Cherry Hill Fire Department has automatic aid runs every day. Sometimes multiple times a day. I'm going to say, I probably, the most recent fire I fought, which was Monday morning, was in Mapleshade, which is not even Camden County. That's us a rare shot of all four of us from my crew working together at the same time. And we were first due at an office building fire in Maple Shade, which, I mean, the office building is practically in walking distance of my firehouse, but it's a different town and it's a different county. But even there, where there are some challenges there, we don't get all the information sometimes, caller notes, dispatch notes, and things that we do in a Camden County run. We're able to be patched in. We're instantly patched into the Burlington County radio system. Our fireground radios work the same, and it's just, we're talking to a different dispatcher. We're behind the 8 ball sometimes a little bit because until we're patched into their channel, we're not hearing radio traffic. So if something's been going on for a while, we may not know what's going on, but we have apps and everything now. Guys all have pulse point and stuff. So guys tend to get heads up. The phone starts ringing the firehouse. This job the other morning was, the Leroy Jenkins, its tone starts going off. But like this job the other morning, we didn't have a heads up for that just because it was 5 something in the morning. So, we were woken up I was woken up by the app. In fact, because the app will trigger before Camden County dispatches. Our app will go off when Burlington County sends the run over to Camden County. But then Camden County has to get that information and dispatch us. Once they dispatch us, we can get patched into Burlington County's radio. But so at 5 something on Monday morning, my phone, we were in bed, we were coming off. We were going to be off for 4 days. But the app went off. All I saw was the address in Maple Shade. I hit the house bells and out the door we go. And we ended up being first due at a what I think it went to 3 alarms. It was really kind of a 2-alarm fire. I think the 3rd alarm was just because at 5, 6 in the morning on a weekday is a challenging time for some of the volunteer companies. But we're part of a very robust kind of integrated system. And we're on every single town that geographically touches Cherry Hill. We're on auto aid into those places. Awesome. So, I mean, it's not mutual aid. It's auto aid. We're on the initial box for most of those places. So almost all our companies are going out of town regularly. And then our special ops companies are part of, they're part of a much bigger system and geographically kind of cover literally the whole county. But yeah, we the engines and ladders go to fires out of town, or at least are dispatched to fires out of town. I mean, literally almost every day. So, and it's great. I think the county communication system, for the most part, the dispatchers, the system does a great job. They manage that. It's seamless. We have a great radio system with lots of channels. No matter where things are in the county, we can all talk to each other.
They're pretty. From what I've heard, they're pretty on top of like actual getting information to you too. Hydrant locations, who you got coming to you, tracking units coming in, and who hasn't signed in yet. And
we in Cherry Hill sort of, we don't talk a lot on the radio. I laughed. In fact, people were I got complaints from some buff friends of mine Monday morning that there wasn't enough talking on the radio, so they couldn't figure out from afar what was going on at the fire. And I'm like, all right, sorry, well, that was not my concern to entertain you at 6 o'clock in the morning. But
I'm sorry, I was a little bit busy.
Well, they were complaining when the incident commander wasn't giving enough, updates. And I'm like, I assure you, on the fire scene, it was as smooth of a fire as I've ever been at. And and this is at a fire that there was units from multiple counties working. The first 4 arriving fire trucks at that fire were from 4 different fire departments in 2 different counties, and we seamlessly operate together. So I think that's kind of a test.
I'm sorry you weren't entertained on your scanner app.
We were busy. But we don't talk a lot in Cherry Hill on the radio. We have standing orders for all of our riding assignments. So generally, based on what order you're arriving, under normal sort of circumstances, you have standing orders. So as it should be. So there's we don't have chiefs that kind of are micromanaging things. They kind of stand back and they manage. They're not micromanaging. They're allowing company level decisions to be made, and even at the company level, like I'm relying, like my guys are, I give them the play and they execute the play. That's how we're set up, and that's how we we train, and that works very well, for us. Some of it's challenging a little bit on the auto aid situations, just because different places have different staffing situations, or they may operate a little bit different than us, or we're just not familiar with their buildings. But within Cherry Hill, I mean, all our rigs have computers. We have pre-plans, for many of our buildings. We get the caller's notes from whatever the call taker takes and puts in. We see that on the screen. So when everything's working correctly, we're rolling down the street with quite a bit of information in hand, so that when we arrive, we could even make quicker decisions. We're going to size up obviously what we see and what's been reported, and then, kind of call the play accordingly. But we're also, we're very big on proactively getting in our buildings. We are a kind of train every day fire department. You're going to do something every day, which like, to me, like that's just, that
mind-blowing,
well,
right?
people are mind blown by that, but I mean, but that's the job, I mean, that's what you're supposed to do, I couldn't imagine otherwise. Like the pace that we are expected to operate at, at least where I work, is such that if you're not prepared, you're going to get run over, so we try to be prepared, and so every day we're out, we try to get in our buildings. Back to like what we were saying a couple minutes ago, the sort of challenge and the shift, especially in the neighborhood I work in, or the side of town I work with, is these buildings are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Which is even requiring more time being spent, in them.
Familiarization,
more time figuring out how the heck do we get a hose line into this, like, how, where do we part, like, these are just things that we're not going to 1,500 square foot, dwellings with the hydrant across the street. We're still going to plenty of those.
Now, are you guys linked in with the like fire inspectors and fire code like the building department and stuff like that, or are they linked in with the department or no?
So
like, are you guys sharing intelligence on the new buildings and construction and stuff?
Yes. So fire prevention, the fire marshals are part of the fire department. We have a chief fire marshal who's obviously a uniform. Joe Cornforth, we were on the same company together a couple of years ago before he got promoted. And then we have one full-time firefighter who's a fire inspector. And then we have a few other uniformed fire inspectors who are considered civilians. But yes, we are very, the chief fire marshal is very involved with the construction office.
Okay.
We've actually, we've even, we keep finding ways to, how do we deal with the nuisance sort of things that we have properties that, or types of incidents that disproportionately, impact our agency, that disproportionately take resources, up. We have certain buildings that we're at all the time, so we have I have the ability, all our company officers have the ability to immediately, I can write a report directly to our fire marshals. And I can report that, hey, we keep going here for this alarm issue, or the alarm's not working, or the alarm won't reset. Like, we have that ability. We just started having this wave of elevator incidents. I mean, literally a couple of days. I mean, my last day on, or at least last tour, one of the days, we had 3, elevator runs in one day. And that sometimes happens. But we were finding, Jim Heisler and I got to fight a fire the other day. And that was a good. So actually, even talk about another career department. I mean, Jim could chime in. I don't even know how many fire departments. I was up in this office building that was on fire, and all I knew is I had me and my guys, and everybody else was from different fire departments, and there was typically only one unit from each fire department there. And we just, Jim was there with his guys, and we were just, we were all on the same radio channel. We were all doing the same thing. And it was kind of seamless. And all of a sudden this fire in this rather large building that was kind of an unknown situation we pulled up was very quickly brought under control with a bunch of guys who maybe socially know each other, but don't work together. I mean, in the case of Jim, even in the same, I don't even work in the same county. as Jim, and we're operating on the same fire floor together.
Nah, I mean, Jim's a legend himself. I mean,
Jim is a legend himself.
that guy's.
Yeah. I lost track of where we're going, but
we were talking about fire marshals and
yeah. So we
departments.
even this year, over the last few months, we even realized that we started going all these elevator runs, and we kind of find out that the township's getting beat up by a lot of our apartment buildings who are saying, our elevators are always broken, or we're stuck in the elevators all the time, and the township was saying, well, we're not getting this information. Yeah. And, so, well, the fire department was there. Well, we realized, like, well, wait a minute. Well, the township construction office was not finding out that, that we were responding to these buildings literally almost daily. So what did we do? We created a system where now at the fire officer level, the company officer level, we do notifications directly to the construction office every time we have an elevator run, which, like I said, the other day, I wrote 3 of those reports. And now what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing they have the ability to enforce, things against elevators. Us as the fire department, I can shut your elevator down for safety concern, but if I leave and you turn it right back on, there's really nothing we can do. The township construction office can fine you. They can do other things. And we found like that's good for the fire department because it's reducing our runs, but it's good for the people that live in those buildings. There's now a layer of enforcement that's directly involved. And sometimes these buildings, we understand they're old apartment buildings, and there's issues getting parts. Things are extremely expensive. Sometimes getting elevator mechanics there takes time. We get that, but a lot of times it's also, they're not making repairs. I've had, supers and buildings flat out lie to my face. Oh yeah, the elevator guy's on his way. I had a run a couple months ago. We go to an apartment building. The super is there, or, the maintenance guys is there. And he's like, I didn't call you guys. I said, all right, well, somebody called to say, somebody was trapped in the elevator. Nah, nobody trapped in the elevator. You guys can go. Okay. So we leave. I did say on the radio, I said building maintenance said, there's no problem here. We're available. 30 seconds later, literally 30 seconds later, the county comes back
from inside the elevator. They can hear you.
County calls back and says, engine 52, check your MDC. So boom, here comes a run. I read the notes. Maintenance man stuck in elevator. This is literally 30 seconds later. The same guy that just told us there was no problem.
I think it's lunchtime.
So all right, boys, we're going back. So we go back, and now, he's speechless because he realizes that we caught him kind of red-handed. But so we are integrated in there. Me at the company level, I'm not involved in the planning in from the construction department, but our fire marshal absolutely is. Once information becomes available, we tend to get it. And once buildings start going up, we're in them. And that's kind of our culture.
Excellent. That's phenomenal. Really, other than them actually letting us in, the fire service as a whole, into the planning of development and letting us lay things out, that's what more can we ask for, really?
Yeah, at the company level, we've seen, we know, we kind of joke. We have properties that we know, like, sort of what generation of time that some of these properties had been built, because we could tell that there was no integration between the fire department and whoever approved these places. Because we go there and we're like, how is the FDC, on the Alpha Bravo corner of the building, but the fire hydrants on the Charlie Delta corner of the building? Like, who approved this? This doesn't make any sense. And so, or why is the Knox box in these places? So, even things at the company level, like we can, a Knox box is in a place that doesn't make sense. We hit up our fire marshals and say, hey, you can't force this building to move their Knox box, but it doesn't make sense. We come here enough. This Knox box needs to be here. This is where we're going in. And then the buildings that did slip by back in the day, those are buildings that we know are places we just have to train more at. That, hey, what's the coordination of how are 2 engine companies going to get that hydrant that's, way over there, and get this FDC, which is way over there, and get up to fight this fire. Well, we have to choreograph those things. And we know what buildings are ground balls, ones that we're going to pull up. You're going to roll, 50 feet of hose. You're connected to your FDC. You roll 50 feet of hose the other way. You're connected to the hydrant. One guy does all that while everybody else goes up. Or we have these buildings that you need 2 or 3 engine companies to make that same thing happen. Well, we know those buildings. And then the hope is going forward as new buildings, come up, that those big decisions that lead to decades of challenges, we can nip those in the bud, hopefully, before they even, the ground even gets broken.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what else? I mean, really.
So we were talking. So one question you hit on, and I didn't get to. We were talking about recruitment. We were talking about testing and things like that.
I was just going to bring up the upcoming test and recruitment and stuff.
Yeah. So so as we were saying earlier, back like when you and I were trying to get into the career fire service in New Jersey, you had a better chance of going to 7-Eleven and buying a lottery ticket and winning that than you probably did getting on the job someplace. There was a long time in New Jersey where almost all the departments were the cities, they were contracting. They weren't getting any bigger. They were shrinking through nutrition. There was budget issues. A lot of New Jersey cities weren't growing. The populations weren't growing. They were shrinking. They were decaying. The suburbs were growing, but most of those suburbs, the fire service was not keeping up. Probably with demand. Some places it was. Some places they did hire career personnel. A lot of places pulled the wool over people's eyes, I think, for a long time, and in some cases, still do. Still are. But that's changed, so our cities are growing, Jersey City, Newark, they're growing. I mean, Jersey City's growing faster than it can keep up with itself practically. But even places like Cherry Hill, the populations are going up. So the fire service is growing, Jersey City Fire Department is bigger than it's ever been. I think Newark is to the point, I think, where they're about to be bigger than they've ever been. And all of these now smaller communities that maybe got away for a long time with only having either a handful of guys or having nobody, they need career personnel now. So, so the number of jobs out there, is unseen, it's unprecedented. And so that's putting,
I was saying, I wish I could, I tell you guys at work, I wish I could go back 15 years.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
in age.
Sure. Yeah. Well, they're playing with house money now. It's a job seekers market right now. It is not the employer's market. Whereas
because the difficulty now is keeping them,
is getting them in the first place and then keeping them. So, so this is a very interesting time, at least in Cherry Hill, in that the civil, we all know the civil service test process is going on right now. If I'm not mistaken, I think, people start taking their test in the next couple of weeks. We are a Title 40 town, so Cherry Hill Township is not part of the state civil service system. So while we're public employees, we fall under all the same rules as public employees elsewhere. The hiring and promotional processes for both the Cherry Hill Fire Department, the Cherry Hill Police Department, are different. They're run within those organizations, as they call them the chief's tests. So we have our hiring tests coming up. The process is going to be open from January 2nd through February 14th, 2015. And the challenge for us right now, in addition to everybody else who is trying to attract from a pool that has more options than ever before. It's also, we're running our Title 40 test the same time the state's running its civil service test, which I think, I have had enough conversations with potential applicants over the last month or so. There's clearly confusion about that. And I don't blame, I don't blame a 21-year-old kid who doesn't know a lot about things. Well, hey, I signed up for the civil service test. I'm good for everywhere. Right. Well, and it's like, well, where's your address? I mean, I've literally spoken to people who didn't even understand that them taking the civil service test with their Monmouth County home address was going to make it unlikely, for them to be at the top of many places lists. you know, so that's a challenge, I think, for everybody. But we are running our test. Our test is going to be it's a 7 week open window where you register, and then through the National Testing Network (NTN), you take our written test or our computer test. Which you can either go, they have 2 centers in New Jersey. One is in Mount Laurel, so right outside of Cherry Hill. The other one's in Jersey City. There's a few others that are immediately outside of New Jersey, in the Delaware Valley. And I think there's probably some outside of New Jersey, on the northern side of the state. Or if your computer meets whatever requirements NTN asks for, you can take the test remotely. So we'll have a 6 or so week window where you can take our test. Everyone that passes that test will then get invited to our physical ability test. We run a physical ability test that is modeled literally off of a map from the state civil service test course. We fit that in our fire headquarters. It is almost identical, literally to the measurement, to what the state course is. And everyone who passes the written test will be invited to take the physical ability test. Then everyone who completes that then gets invited to an oral interview. And then your score between your written test, your physical ability test, and your oral interview comes together. It's composited together, and that's your score. We have a couple other factors in there that can get you a couple extra points if you work EMS for us currently. If you're a Cherry Hill resident, if you're a Camden County resident, if you're a honorably discharged veteran, if you have Fire One, there's a couple ways, and that's all laid out on our website where you can pick up a couple extra points. But we hired 21 in 2023. We hired 21 firefighters in 23, which is very unusual for us. We usually hire 4 or 6 at a time. But we had a mass amount of retirements. The Cherry Hill Fire Department had expanded about 25 years ago. Oh, there he is. There's the handsome. See, I don't know. I think
the handsome Palumbo. There you go.
Yeah,
there you go. The handsome Palumbo.
Yeah, he should be the one on. He should be the one on camera. What's up, Matt? Yeah, we hired 21 in 2023, and you know, people say all the time, like, oh, these chiefs tests, you got to know somebody, or you got to live in that town, or you got to be somebody's
I knew a lot of people. I didn't get hired.
Yeah, I didn't know anybody. I had, when I got hired in Cherry Hill in 07, I had only ever met one employee of the fire department before, and that happened to be the fire chief, Bob Giorgio. And I had just met him. I didn't even know him. I had met him. But I mean, out of the 21 that we hired last year, I mean, I think there's like 8 or 10 counties represented. You know, I mean, I have one of those guys on my crew, and he comes from Somerset County. He has no connection whatsoever to Cherry Hill. We have guys coming from as far as Hudson County, Passaic County, Bergen County, and the opposite direction. You know, Ocean County, Atlantic County, Cumberland County, Gloucester County. They're literally they're coming from all over the place. And you know, and are there some things? I mean, I came from Middlesex County south. Does it still boggle my mind 18 years later that there are people that willingly root for the Philadelphia Eagles like that? I still like I shudder, like when I'm like, who these people really exist, and I have to work with them. And so there are some things you have to get over, like that. You know, but I tell you, you know, the old thing of like, you got to know somebody to get hired there. I guarantee, you know, out of the 21 we hired a year ago, you know, 90% of them, you know, 80% of them didn't know anybody. You know, they came, they did well on the written test, they did well on their physical test, they did well on the oral interviews. Maybe they picked up an extra point here and there if they had Fire One or something like that, or if they were veterans. But, you know, we hired a mix of people that couldn't have been more fantastic and couldn't have been more different than each other, and just bring different things to the team. And that's what we're hoping for in this hiring cycle. Again, we're trying to kind of push the envelope beyond just reaching out to the current firefighter community. You know, we're pretty sure, you know, that the volunteers out there, or maybe even some people on the job elsewhere, they're going to hear about our test. They're going to be interested in taking our test. If Cherry Hill's a good fit for them, they're going to go for, a job there. And that's great. And those people, they're probably going to be a lot of the people that get hired. But as we've also learned, that there's a lot of really talented, really, important other people to reach. And so the challenge, sign this man up for the department PI. So Greg used to work for us. Greg is on the job now in Charlotte. So Greg is welcome to come back up to New Jersey. And I don't think are you 35 yet, Greg? I don't know if he is. But he's welcome to take our test. But he used to work EMS and then was a Camden Metro cop. Now a fireman at Charlotte. So that's where we stand. But we're also, we're in the same boat as everybody else nationwide. It's just like there's more and more jobs. More communities need career staffing. EMS runs everywhere, are just grow disproportionately to all logic, and that falls on the fire service. So that puts an additional manpower burden, whether you're a firefighter staffing an ambulance or just a firefighter being in a first responder system, that requires personnel. And, we're all competing each other for the same talent pool. And I don't know if that pool is necessarily dwindling. I don't think it's dwindling necessarily. I just think there's more options. And in New Jersey, when Jersey City hires 50 at a clip, Newark hires 50 at a clip, there goes everybody's lists. You start really going deep into some of these lists. So that's also one of the important things of like, okay, how do we find people who maybe didn't think about being a firefighter before, or maybe didn't have a dad or an uncle or a grandpa or something that was in the fire service, or or in the volunteer fire service. How do you find those people? How do you find people who are, two of the guys that we hired in this last batch, we're both Cherry Hill residents. We're not firefighters. They were military guys, but they're handy and they're smart and they're fantastic. And like long term, they're going to be some of the best hires like we have. And so it's like, how do you keep going in that direction? How do you find people who are smart, who are fit, who are handy, who want to have a career where they want to help people? And the challenge is how do you find those people? And that's the same boat we're in with everybody else, nationwide. So
100%. Absolutely. All right. So let's get a little into, what you're doing with NEP, and first of all, what is NEP, and what you're doing with the union, and
so I guess it's probably easier for me I'll start at the beginning and I'll get to the union and NEP. So from minute one in me being in the fire service, I started noticing that there was a lot of disconnects between things that were very well understood inside the firehouse, and the reality of outside of the firehouse. There was a lot of, like when I was a member in Sayreville, everyone in that fire department knew that certain times a day we had manpower challenges. We were different than a lot of places because it was a blue collar town. People worked a lot of different kind of schedules. DPW, cops, firefighters. Like we had a lot of guys, who on a Tuesday at 11 a.m. you could get a firehouse full of guys. Wednesday at 11 a.m. the next day, inexplicably those guys weren't around. But in a lot of towns there's plenty of people around at night. They weren't around during the day. But I always felt like we did everything we could to have the perception that we were a career fire department. We wore uniforms and we didn't want people to know we were volunteers, but yet we needed those people to volunteer. And that was from minute one. I said, there's this disconnect here. There's a misunderstanding. How do we close that gap? How do we get that, that understanding, resolved? Ironically, I remember, and it's funny looking back at this. So I was maybe a year or two, maybe a little longer. I was very, I was still a relatively new guy in Sayreville. My cousin, Laura, who lived in New Brunswick, still does, lived her whole life there, came and visited my parents' house, and she had her young son, Phil, with her. And he was, maybe a kindergartner. at the time, and he started getting bored. And I said, "Oh, you want to go up the street to the firehouse?" And of course, what kindergarten boy doesn't want to go there? We go there. I had forgotten like it was fire prevention week, like a week or two before. He knew where the air horns were. He knew all this stuff. So I turned the battery on the rig. What does he immediately do? He goes and hits the air horn. So so my cousin's like, "Oh, you're gonna bother the guys." And I said, there's nobody here. And I mean, this is in the same county, 2 or 3 towns away.
Yeah.
We're in Sayreville. She's from New Brunswick. I mean, the thought that there's no, where are the firefighters? Oh, well, you see this pager I'm wearing? Like when there's a fire, we that goes off and we all come up here. She's like, "That's insane." It's like, "I've never heard that before." And I'm like, "What are you talking? You live 10 minutes from here. You've never heard that before?" She goes, "No, that's insane." Well, strangely enough, young Phil is now a New Brunswick fireman. So
that's awesome.
So that's a true story. But yeah, so I always thought there was this disconnect. And then when I got into the career service, I thought kind of my world working in media was behind me. I thought maybe I'll work a little bit on the side, still in there. I wasn't even off probation yet. And the fire chief was like, "Hey man, I need you to make a video. I need you to do this." I made a recruitment video not 20 years ago. I've been in a job, but probably in 1998, I think, that's still on YouTube. That's probably got 30 or 40,000, views. I made that. I was like a rookie on the job, and I thought all that stuff was behind me. So I kept getting things kind of getting dribbled at me. And then the thing that I started realizing in the career fire service, though, was, there were guys, as you can go to any firehouse, I'm sure, on earth, firemen, they love to drink coffee, they love to eat, and they love to complain, I found,
what else is there to do?
How else do you pass the time? Well, a lot of these complaints, you hear them again and again and again and again, and you just get to, well, what are we doing about that? Like,
complaining about it, duh.
And then like, what? Yeah, we're going to complain about it. Well, okay, well,
let's do something about it.
Who's listening? Who's listening outside of this kitchen? Nobody cares. Well, so how are we going to fix things if we don't bring these problems kind of outside these walls? Because and firefighters upset, "Well, I don't want to get politics involved in fire service." I hate to tell you, the second you put your hand up and you just aligned yourself into a political organization. You're a government employee. You are the government. You work for an agency that is completely supported by the public, whether it's completely by their tax bases or by donations. You only exist because other people are willingly or not willingly, maybe through their taxes, giving you money to exist. Okay, so you are in the political game whether you want to be or not. So I started thinking like, okay, how do we get better at this system here? And so as time went along, social media kind of popped up. This was just kind of dumb luck. I think shortly after I got on the job in Cherry Hill, I got my first Facebook account and Twitter and all that stuff. And I started taking a deep dive into, how can we use these things in the fire service? And so next thing I know, my fire chief comes to me and says, "Hey, we need you to start up social media accounts for the department." So next thing I know, I'm figuring out Facebook and Twitter and how to use these things. And I'm going to seminars and classes. I went out to the National Fire Academy. This is way back in the day. In fact, 10 years ago, 10 years ago today was the first time I had taught a class in front of a large audience. It was at the Middlesex County Fire Academy on the use of social media in the fire service. And I started, like I said, there was always this disconnect, and you there?
That's
Did I lose you, or did you lose me, or we lose?
I think the whole thing just blacked out.
No, the whole thing blacked out. All right, because the live clock was still going, but you froze.
Then it was just me. Then just me cut out.
The live clock was gone, then you froze, then you disappeared, and then you came back.
All right, well,
so hopefully this.
Welcome me back to my own show.
Welcome, Nick. Tell us about yourself. So anyway, so I like I said, I always thought there was this gap. Like, how do we close the gap? Well, what fell into all of our laps was social media. And
Yeah.
now here's a way for the fire service to directly communicate to whoever they wanted to communicate with. So some of the barriers of how do we get messages out? How do we, interact with the public? How do we interact with each other? How do we interact with the politicians that we work for? Now there was a bridge to all those things. So I sort of got it pushed on me from my own fire department to look into these things, and I quickly realized that while my kind of background in communications I spoke the language, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I started down a path to find out about these things and to take a deep dive. And I started going to seminars, and this was in its infancy. Like I said, 10 years ago today I taught a class on social media in the fire service at the Middlesex County Fire Academy. That was the first time I had done that. But I had taken quite a deep dive before that, as far as I could go. And shortly after that, I started going to grad school, or right around there, maybe I started going to grad school at Oklahoma State. And I didn't quite know what I was getting into there either. I went to Oklahoma State thinking, like, I'm going to study leadership. And I remember my advisor was like, nope, you got to like hone in. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll communications. And they were like, nope, they're like, you need to become a subject expert on something as thin as a piece of paper. So next thing I know, okay, I'm gonna go deep into the use of social media in the fire service, and I even went deeper. I wrote a thesis on how the fire service uses Facebook in particular. So I literally did an academically validated study that I presented. That's published in a academic journal. It's published in the Oklahoma State Library, and that I even got to present on a panel with the then Dr. Dennis O'Neill, who was the National Fire Administrator, and now the current National Fire Administrator, Dr. Lori Moore Merrill. They were on this panel, and I got to present, kind of my findings. And next thing I was just sort of thrust into this. So I changed careers thinking, okay, I'm going to ride on a fire truck and help people. And while obviously I've done that for a long time, I took this unexpected sort of detour, and took this deep dive. And then that kind of led to other things. So it led to, doing some work within the fire department. I kind of hit a point where it was unclear in the fire department what role I really should be doing with communicating. I wasn't being compensated. I didn't really have a chain of command. Like it was putting me in very awkward situations. So at the same time, they hired a civilian, Tammy DeLuca, who came in and kind of took over that stuff. So it was a good sort of handoff. I kind of handed it all off to her. But I had gone deep in this stuff, and I'm like, well, what do I do now?
What do I do with this information?
What do I do with this information? And by dumb luck, I was our state delegate for a bunch of years for Cherry Hill Firefighters IFF Local 2663 to the Professional Firefighters Association in New Jersey. So I would go to the monthly meetings, ironically up at the Middlesex County Fire Academy in the neighborhood I literally grew up in. And somebody made a motion that the PFA&J needed to create a communications director or social media. They didn't kind of know what it was. But I believe Tim Kalachi from North Hudson was the one that kind of, made that motion. And they said, okay, we're going to create a new position that's going to maybe be on the executive board, maybe support the executive board. It ended up being created under the president. And a bunch of guys like, you should apply. So I said, I'm not going to get this job. Like, who am I? So I applied, and apparently I was the only one that applied, shockingly. And so I got this position. So I was the first ever, it started as communications director. It became a little too much work. So we kind of broke it up a little bit. And then I eventually became just the social media director for the PFA&J. So I did that for 5 years. And, that was a really, it was challenging. It was a lot of work. It was working with locals from Cape May all the way up to, Bergen County. But it was interesting. It got me now neck deep in politics and in learning about issues from city level departments to 4-man, 5-man, departments in Monmouth County and things like that. And I got exposed to those pieces. I met met people from all over those places, got immersed in their issues. I helped a lot of them on their issues from a strategic campaigns point of view. And it was really a learning experience. It gave me, an insight to a lot of things that I'd only had been able to touch on. And again, it fell into this whole idea of me, like, how do we close this gap? How do we close how do we go from complaining at the kitchen table to making things, to making change
and making them better?
And now I'm starting to see the roadmap on how that happens. And it's not sexy stuff. It's communicating things. It's communicating things to your own members, first of all, communicating things to the public, communicating things to politicians. I had worked as doing branding when I worked in TV, making, I'd be on a campaign for NBC, NBC Sports, or TNT Sports is when I used to do a lot, like just the type commercials that you would see on their own network advertising their own shows. Well, I'm like, okay, well, I learned this from literally as high of a level as you can be. How do I apply this into the fire service? How do I get us to be able to brand ourselves so that the understanding of what we need and who we are and what we do is known beyond the walls of the kitchen and the firehouse? So I kind of took that on as my mission, whether I wanted it or not. And the PFA&J ended up being a really good platform for that. Next thing I know, I'm in Trenton, or, we're with the IFF in Washington, D.C., walking Capitol Hill. You're meeting Congress people, you're meeting state senators and assembly people. You're with the governor. You're with senators. You're with people from other locals, from other cities, from other states. And then that got me involved a little bit at the international level. And that was a whole other level, so we were figuring kind of things out at the Cherry Hill level, then figuring things out at the PFA&J level. And then you get exposed to people at the international level. And I'm like, man, these guys are pros. Like,
and now you're hitting the pinnacle being on NJ Fire Guys.
And now, yeah, well, this was not even a dream. Like this is,
it's still
not. This kind of is the top of the mountain. So,
right. I appreciate that.
But anyway, I got exposed to a lot of people and a lot of, as I like to call them high functioning organizations. So, I got exposed through the PFA&J and through the international to just these fire departments, literally across America that were overcoming some of these challenges. So the challenges that got complained about from the Melrose Hose Company up through my company in Cherry Hill, through my whole local in Cherry Hill. And then you're going to places and you're like, oh yeah, we had that problem. We got through it. We solved it. We fixed it. Oh, how'd you do that? And almost always it's through politics. It's, we found a political means to make something happen. And so, what I also found at the same time and, is, I still, like I said, I've ridden on a fire truck all this time. I'm big on the hands-on training and recognize that's the most important thing. But you go to every conference, in America, and somebody's teaching a class on doing more with less, or if I see one more guy run a class called the do-it-yourself engine company or the do-it-yourself truck company, okay, great. It is important to have classes on how do you do more with less. How do you work in tight resources, tight manpower environments? But where the hell are the classes on how do we get more? If you go to FDIC, you're not going to find that class. Of how do we get more? Why are we keep getting why are we allow ourselves to get kicked in the teeth? So I found that, okay, if we take kind of communications, we take branding, we take messaging and marry that up with old school kind of political communications and political strategy and strategic campaign and strategic planning, maybe you can bridge some of these gaps and you could communicate to your public and say, hey, we're understaffed or we're under-resourced or, and we're concerned about that because, XYZ, and that affects you. And hey, it doesn't really take much more out of your pocket as the taxpayer to fix some of these gaps. And hey, mayor, like if you're on board with this and aren't going to fight us, like we can maybe get to a next level of service that maybe helps the economy in this town. It helps support, in
Yeah.
Cherry Hill has become, it was always known as a retail center. It was kind of the retail capital of Southern New Jersey. It's now a healthcare center. So Cherry Hill is like the healthcare center of Southern New Jersey. We have one legit, full up hospital, but every hospital in Philly or in the greater Philly area has giant centers in Cherry Hill. We have like 12 nursing homes. We have group homes all over the place. Healthcare has become the main industry there. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we as a fire department are well suited to meet the needs of those things, which is, largely endless amounts of EMS runs. But we're well suited for that. Well, but how do we get well suited for that? Well, we were, we politically kind of navigated those routes and say, hey, like cool, but build more things that's going to increase demand. We'll meet it. Just don't fight us when we ask for things. And that was sort of a lesson that I learned from a lot of places. You pick up things here and there. So, so that was a long answer to your question. So how did I get to NEP? So, and what is NEP?
Well, first, what is NEP?
So I worked when I started doing some stuff at the international level, and when I was working at the PFA&J, I met and kind of worked with Mark Treglio, who was for probably a decade. He was head of strategic campaigns at the IFF. He was a retired Jacksonville, Florida fire lieutenant. He's from New York State, but was on the job in Jacksonville, Florida. Got involved politically. He was a radio guy who in Jacksonville, they said, hey, about communications, like you're going to help the union, and he's like, I'm a radio guy, but next thing you know, he's helping them do strategic communications and they're getting political wins. So next thing you know, he's helping at the state level. Next thing you know, he's plucked up to DC. And he had a team of guys. A lot of them are still there, just second to none as far as getting political wins. So I got exposed to those guys. They run a training academy, communications training academy. I got to take that through the IFF, and I got to sort of use those guys as mentors and as support for a lot of the work we were doing at the PFA&J. I did serve for a brief time for the IFF itself as district service rep for the first district, doing strategic campaign things. But a lot of those I did, for when I was still in my PFA&J position. So I met Mark there. By coincidence, the PFA&J, when I first came on, I literally, this is not a lie. When I got in this newly created position at the PFA&J, I inherited like a 1994 website and an AOL email address. That was basically the communications capability of the PFA&J at the time. Man. So one of the first things we did was we need a new website. We need to modernize and get a nice website. So I did a deep dive into website companies. I came across this company, NEP, was out of Southern California. Had zero presence in New Jersey, had very little presence on the East Coast. But they gave me some of their clients and said, hey, call these places and see what they have to say about us. So I did. I called a bunch of fire departments, not fire department. They were all unions. It was all union related things, FOP, largely.
What does
a
it
lot
stand
of IFF
for?
locals. It's New Equity Productions, it's called. And so I got a lot of good things, a lot of good feedback about them. So we, as the PFA&J, went with them to build our new website. And they were just kind of getting into the fire market then. We were one of their first fire clients. I think we were the first fire state association they had. They had a few FOP state associations. So they were really good with like working with me, and because they didn't understand that market, they've done fundraising for law enforcement for a long time. That's their bread and butter of the company. It still is. When you write your check to the PBA or to the FOP, your yearly donation, that's kind of what they do nationwide, and that grew into
I don't know who that is, but
I don't know who that is.
That says a lot.
anyway, we got involved with them. I became friends with a lot of them behind the scenes. They kind of would call me up for thoughts on how do they expand in the fire market, how do they better serve the fire market. I gave them a lot of ideas. They were growing rapidly in the fire realm. Mark, who was at the IFF, I kept telling NEP, like, hey, you gotta wine and dine this guy. He's the key to the city. I somehow they linked together. Mark was trying to do some side project where he needed a website. I kind of connected them. And then one day I get a call from Mark and he says, you better have a seat. So I have a seat, and he's like, did you know who the new vice president of NEP is going to be? And I'm like, nah, who? He goes, me. And I was like, what? And next thing you know, Mark left the IFF and he became the vice president of NEP. And so eventually I came over and started working as a contractor for them, doing what I did, for everybody else, branding, strategic communications and branding. And for the last year or so, I've largely been on a leave from them. My dad, unfortunately, about a year ago, got ill and then passed away about 6 months ago. So that had sort of taken away all my spare time to work side work. And then for the time being, I'm now neck deep in helping out with recruitment and stuff in Cherry Hill. So I'm kind of on a leave. But so NEP is it's a communications company, does fundraising, does websites, does strategic communications. They've got about 600 clients, almost all of which are unions. And most of those are police unions. But I think they have over 100 fire clients now and other trade unions and things like that. So so it's just sort of a natural flow. I went from doing stuff at the union level to doing stuff for a commercial entity. But it's been great. Like I've literally, like I'm working with pros, these folks at all levels, the PFNJ, the IFF, NEP, they know what they're doing. And so it's really been a blessing. Like, okay, well then in whatever time I have left in the fire service, I turned 50 in a couple of days. I've got less time ahead of me than I had behind me. It's like, okay, well, what can I do? What based on my experience working at a high level in the media industry, I'm married to a television network executive. So even though I don't work in TV anymore, I still get to, there she is, Karen. Those are my sons, CJ and Max. That was a couple of years ago when I got promoted. CJ and Max are much taller now. CJ's my height now. So I'm exposed to that world, and it's just like, okay, how do I bring these things, how do I tie all these things together? How do I tie the needs that I get to see riding on the front, the front right seat of a fire engine in a reasonably busy, 2,000 run a year fire engine in a reasonably busy town. How do I take those needs with the needs that I have from, my media experience to then the strategic campaigns, political kind of experience, and how do I tie all those together? And that's kind of what it wasn't the mission I think I set off on, but it's the mission that I've found myself, trying to deliver on. So that's kind of my story, and where I keep going. And now, like I said, now I'm trying to use some of those same skills in the recruitment realm, like how do we tell this? How do we tell the fire services story to new people? One thing I've learned, I've gone to a couple of career fairs in the last few weeks, and it was sort of a refreshing slap in the face again for me. I'm thinking back to when I joined the Melrose Hose Company in 1997, and I'm thinking, hey, there's this disconnect here. Our biggest problem is we don't have any members, but our biggest problem is we don't want to tell people we don't have any members. Well, I'm at career fairs, and I'm realizing we're talking to all these college students at different colleges, and I mean, just bright, interesting people with, and they don't know anything about the fire service. And you forget, like we live in these bubbles, we live in our kitchens in the fire. And this is all most of us think about. That's all I think about. I have a hard time talking to other people. Like, I don't know what to talk to my neighbors about, because, I just think about
when I
the
went
fire
to
service all the
kindergarten,
time.
you can ask my brother. This is a true story. So when I grew up, my whole neighborhood was either cops or firemen. Like our dads were mostly cops or firemen.
Yep.
And the ones that were cops were mostly volunteer firemen.
Right.
So when I went to preschool with a bunch of cops and firemen's kids.
Kids. Yeah.
So when I went to kindergarten, I didn't understand that not everybody's like, I said to a guy, a kid that was my best friend at the time, I'm like, so what fire company is your dad in? He's like, what?
Right.
I was like, your dad's not a fireman? I'm like, well, does he go to meetings and drills? Like, I couldn't fathom that not everybody's, that's all I knew.
Well, I've learned the hard way over the last few weeks, being at Camden County College, being at Rowan, being at Rutgers, that we start talking to these young adults who are maybe in some ways weeks away from entering the workforce, and say, hey, I start the conversation like, hey, you ever think about working in the fire service or working for the fire department? And inevitably, if you're at a general career event like that, the answer is almost completely no. Oh, would you like to talk to us for a couple minutes? And sure, and next thing we know, and I always make sure we bring younger folks with me. Nobody wants to talk to me like the old guy. Like they're like, wait a minute, if I join the fire service, am I going to look like you, old and broken? So we bring like young, jacked, excited, like love the job, young folks with us. And so I give a little a little overview, and I said, hey, you mind talking to these guys? And next thing I know, 20 minutes later, they're still talking to those young gung-ho, guys. And next thing you know, they're giving us their information. Hey, can you contact us, when your test is coming, or, hey, how do I get more information? So, so you realize like that, when you really pitch what the job is, and sure, there's things about this job that suck, and compared to a job where you could make, you make money from never leaving your house, that's a challenge. That's a new challenge, and the sleep deprivation and, risk of injury and cancer exposure and all these things. Okay. Those are all realities of the job. Now, those are things, like I said, when we're trying to close those gaps, those are things that internally we're all trying to work on, hopefully, but those are things.
If you're at a college job fair and these kids are coming out of college, how many thousands of dollars in student loan debt, and they're like, wait, you want me to start at what, 30,000?
Well, but believe it or not, when a lot of, and this is again, and I think sometimes in the fire service, we, I as a union guy, maybe I shouldn't be saying this. Most of us are paid pretty well. Most of us are paid pretty, we're paid pretty well. We have jobs with health insurance and pensions, and paid time off and family leave and, blah, blah, blah. And job security, almost all of us have job security. So we forget that. And when you're talking to college kids and you say, hey, here's a career that's going to starting pay is maybe $50,000 a year. But you're going to have health care, you're going to have a pension, and you're going to get a raise, probably every year. And you only have to come to work, depending what system you're in, 9 days a month. That's the part that folks have never thought about, and that's where, I think we've sort of failed, or we've taken for granted. We had the fire service in New Jersey, especially, was allowed to be kind of arrogant for a long time, because back in the day when you and I were trying to get in a job and there were 600 people taking tests for 4 positions, you could be arrogant. You didn't have to advertise. You didn't have to offer up anything. Whereas now, like you're competing against things and you have to sell the job. But I've found that when you're selling the job, and it is appealing to people, though, still it's you're not at a desk, you have a non-traditional schedule. You get to help people and you're paid pretty well to do it, and maybe at the very beginning you're not, and that's tough. I mean, I worked on an ambulance for 2 years in Avenel and Woodbridge. The first 2 years I was on a job in Cherry Hill, just so I could meet my car payment, but it ramped up relatively quickly. And after a couple of years, I didn't have to work that side job anymore. And, and you're off a lot. So I think when we put that in front of people, that whole package, plus the action side of it and things, that certainly appeals to people. Hey, you can work out when you're on duty. Like that's part of the job. In fact, you're expected to work out when you're on duty, especially if you're in Cherry Hill, like you're contractually expected to work out. These things start like, they start appealing to people, especially in a market where or a job world where stability and long term, like no one's getting hired by the same, by one employer working their full career and retiring anymore. Like that doesn't happen in the real world.
Yeah.
So the thought of like, oh, wait a minute, you're offering me potentially a career path that has some stability. Now, yes, now for some people that stability becomes confining. And we probably all know people who after 10 years on a job as a firefighter, this is not for me. I gotta jump ship. Oh, well, that's fine. Like I did the opposite. I worked in a different career, and after 10 years, I changed direction. That's human nature. That's going to always happen. But I think also when you explain like, well, hey, you're also off a lot, you're home a lot. Like you want to run a business, you've got all those opportunities. You're off a lot with the time to run the business. You're home during the day on those days that you're off, and you have a guaranteed income that's coming in from your fire department employees, plus your employment, plus health insurance, plus all these things. And I think it starts to get the gears moving in people. I've seen it 100 times in the last month. I had a conversation. I text messaged last Tuesday of last week. I text messaged almost 400 people last Tuesday. Every single person who had submitted their information voluntarily to the Cherry Hill Fire Department about our testing process. I texted every one of those people. About 10% of them wrote back or communicated back. Some was just a thank you or whatever. But a few of them said, hey, some wrote back with questions. A couple of them said, hey, I have a lot of questions. Can we have a phone call? I'm like, sure. I had a conversation with a flight attendant. She lives in Camden County. To you and I, that seems like a cool job, maybe, and she just, she said it's brutal. The schedule's brutal.
Yeah. You can't have a life.
You kind of can't have a life. She was still on the early part of her career. So she said that the pay is not great. When you're in the early part of your career, you are not the person on the flight to Hawaii. You're flying.
You're going to Bangor, Maine, and
yes. 3 times on the same day. You're going to Bangor, Maine. And she kind of explained all these things. And she said, she's like, but I'm a workout warrior, like I'm big into fitness. Like when I'm not on a plane, I'm working out. And she's like, I do like the non-traditional, 40-hour a week in a cubicle lifestyle. She's like, and it sounds like the fire service would be something I'm very comfortable with coming from, being a flight attendant, which was similar to me coming from the film business. And she's like, and I want a job, but like a little more stability where I don't have to travel all the time. My work schedule is more predictable. And that I know for 25, 30 years that I have a place. And I was like, I'm like, great. How do we get you, let's get you ready for our test. Let's get you signed up. And, and I hope she does, we unfortunately can't register for our test until January 2nd, the day the window opens. But like I had a great conversation with somebody like that. And so it's like, okay, how many other people like that, who then, if there's one thing, I'm going to say there's one thing I've learned in almost 28 years of doing this is, and this, I don't hear this from many other people, but we're in a people business. The fire service is a social science business. It is not a physical science business. Yes, we have to learn about fire science, and we have to learn about mechanical engineering. We have to learn about hazardous materials. We have to learn about chemistry. We have to learn about all that crap, structural engineering, all that stuff. But that's the how. The why is social things. It's protecting communities. It's dealing with people. It's helping people. So if you don't want to deal with people, if you don't want to learn about people, especially going forward, when I got in 28 years ago as a vol, like the whole idea of the fire service doing EMS was like mind blowing, and that was like we're gonna fight this tooth and nail. Whereas now, like everybody, like EMS is the backbone of what. It's
more of a shock to hear of a department that isn't doing EMS.
Yeah, it's more of a shock. Wait, you actually went to a fire? But the all hazards aspect of it though is I mean, like one thing I love about my current assignment, and I work on the Camden side of Cherry Hill, on the west side of Cherry Hill, close to Camden, close to Philly, the older section of town, a little more densely populated. You know, I mean, in the same shift, we have a realistic shot, you know, we're going to go to a car accident. We're going to go to a fire, or at least a reported fire. Yes, we're going to go to fire alarm, but we're going to have somebody trapped in an elevator. We're going to deal with an overdose. We're going to have a cardiac arrest in a nursing home, and we're going to have somebody ring the bell who's having some sort of social crisis. They're having a behavioral health emergency, a mental health emergency. They're homeless and hungry. That's a shift. That's a typical shift at my firehouse. And so like the skill set that I think you kind of have to deal with all those things. You have to accept the fact too, that like, okay, I might be getting beat up at a fire, 5 minutes from now. I might be in a bloody mess car accident. I might be doing CPR. I might be giving a homeless guy a bottle of water. And that's the job. That is what the job is.
I've said it before. And one of the most impactful things I've ever had, going to conferences around the country, taking strategy and tactics, taking blue card hazard zone conference, FDIC, one of the most impactful lessons in a class, and it's short lesson. Guy puts a picture of, I forget who the instructor is, and I hate myself for it, but he puts a picture of a homeless guy ODing or drunk or whatever on the slumped in a little vestibule of a beat up house, and he goes, "Who wants to go to this call at 3:00 in the morning?" And nobody raises their hand. He goes, "All right." Now he shows a vacant, fully involved. He goes, "Who's going in to search this house?" Everybody raises their hand. Why? Because it's about we're here for them, right? Like that house isn't vacant until we say it's vacant, right? We got to go in there. And then he flips back to the homeless guy on the side of it. He goes, "It's about them, isn't it? It's the same them." He goes, "That vacant house that's fully involved,
right? That's who's living in
that
that
we're
house.
saying is in that house."
Right? Exactly. And
Most impactful
it's just
thing ever.
Again, it's a disconnect. It's like I said before, So I don't know. I think if you explain that to people, like one thing that I have a hard time, and I'll admit I have a hard time talking to my neighbors about my job, because the first question is like, "Oh, did you fight any big fires lately?"
What's the worst thing you've ever seen?
I don't even know what the worst thing I've ever seen.
I try not to remember it.
I don't even know. And when I see something bad, I know in a couple of days I'm going to see something else bad, So like I'm lucky, maybe like nothing stuck. Like I can't think back of like what's the worst thing.
What the worst thing that stuck is? It involves a common bunk room, a shared bunk room amongst the whole crew. That's
when I first got
the worst sites.
When I first got a job in Cherry Hill, I had a common bunk room. Now we never laughed so hard. Like you laughed.
Of course. Yeah.
But you also you need one snorer or whatever.
Snoring. Who sleepwalks? Have you ever had a sleepwalker?
I don't
wake up 3:00 in the morning because you feel eyes on you, and the guy standing in the middle of the room, passed out, gone, standing in the middle of the room. Just
I've heard those stories. I don't think I've experienced them, but I've heard those stories. But those are the things. So like the things that what sticks with me is the day that me or my company screws up. Like those are the things that stick with me. But how do we explain the job? Like, how do I explain the job and my neighbor when like, "Oh, well, when was the last big fire you went to?" I don't know. Like, I don't even know. And what I consider a big fire? Probably they don't consider a big fire, because to me, a big fire, like a fire that we're standing outside and flowing water out of a ladder pipe,
isn't fun.
Is a failure. Like that. To me, like the fire we fought Monday morning in an office building.
That's a big fire.
That's a big fire, but you're standing. Look what everybody's doing. What are they doing? They're standing outside. They're not even wearing air packs. We had the fire we went to Monday morning with my crew, like that my crew, put out with the first line that we pulled. Like, okay, was that a big fire? I don't know. It was a big building. But
it was a good fire.
It was in the sense that
we went in, we did the job, and everything went great, and we all clicked.
And the best part about that job was that it happened right before shift change. So
overtime.
We got overtime, but I didn't care about that. But our relief came to the scene and we
Oh,
left
you
in
didn't
the
have to pick up
spare,
hose.
so we didn't have to pick up hose.
That's
So, I mean, so like normally you go to an away game, you go to a mutual aid or automatic aid job, and you're not picking up much hose usually anyway because you're getting cut loose right away. This case, we were first due, so we had a lot of hose on the ground, but we got relieved, and it was amazing.
That's the
so
best. That is.
These guys are
That's
probably
the best
they're
part.
probably watching this now. Those guys, A group, and are cursing me, but
They're gonna stretch hose in the morning just to.
They're probably fighting a fire right now, as far as I know. No, they're not on duty. They were on duty yesterday. Because we go back on tomorrow. But but how do you explain to the people, like, okay, in the same job, like my crew, we did CPR on an old lady in a nursing home. We Narcaned a guy in a sleazy motel. We picked the lock in somebody's car who locked their keys in it. We reset a fire alarm. We monitored somebody's house for carbon monoxide. That's what a day is for us. And that's great. Like that's what we do. That is our role. And might that be different? Like I work right outside of Camden. I mean, I work, but the job for a Camden firefighter is going to be much different than the job for me. Well, I also work right outside of Voorhees. The job for a Voorhees firefighter is going to be different than a firefighter that works at Station 5 in Cherry Hill. And that's the job. You work on a on a government, a military base.
Your day is much different than my day.
Yeah, my day, but like it's the things we can go to are similar, but every day is different. In my 6-station fire department, I've worked at 5 of the 6 companies. I've been assigned to 5 of the 6. Every firehouse is a different. Like every neighborhood in Cherry Hill.
Yep.
Even though we run together, and I mean, like we kind of have like an east side and west side. We run two engines and a ladder on one side of town, 2 engines and a ladder on the other, and obviously the overlap there. We all go into each other's. We call them locals. But the difference between
your neighborhood,
our neighborhoods are neighborhood, and then Station 4's neighborhood on the other corner of town is like literally working in a different world. They're going on a lot of runs.
Yeah.
They're just different runs than my company goes on. We have heavy hitting, like we have guys, I laugh. I had one, and I'll throw his name because he just got promoted. Jimmy Keegan just got promoted to lieutenant. One of the best guys we got. He's awesome. I was texting him. Today's his birthday, in fact.
Happy birthday.
He was working on my company. I don't know if I guess he was on overtime a couple weeks ago. We go to one of our residential high rises. We go there literally almost every day. We go to the same building every day. My guys are just used to it. We know the routine. Like it's a 13-story residential high rise with a couple hundred apartments. We deal with this place all the time. It's a ground ball level run for us, no matter what we're going there for. And he got there, the lobby's full of people, and there's people grabbing you and trying to tell you different things. And like, and Jimmy just says, he's like, I don't know how you deal with this. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, you were just in like a technical rescue class, like rappel. There he is.
Have to sing him happy
Jimmy
birthday.
Keeks.
Happy birthday.
I'm like, yeah. So happy birthday, Jim. But like, and I'm thinking to myself, well, like you guys were doing a technical rescue the other day, which is like mind-boggling stuff to me. But I don't do that. But I go to runs in big buildings, every day, and that's just what we do. And so but I think that's also what makes the job like appealing. And that's where I think if we can get that message out to people like that, hey, like there is so many dimensions to these jobs, and maybe even the city or the town you work in is important to look into too. Cause I asked, so before we started this kind of recruitment process, I went to all 21. I hit almost all 21 of them. I think I probably got 18 or so out of the 21 of the hires that we hired in 2023. And I said to them, I said, if you had to pitch this job to somebody, and like I said, these guys are from all over, the guys and gals from all over, 10 different counties or something ridiculous that we hired these folks from. Like, how would you pitch this department? What has been a pleasant surprise, or what has met your expectations? And literally almost the same answer came from everybody, which was either some answer about the culture or the way we train. And I kind of took that as the same answer, like that we have a training culture in the Cherry Hill Fire Department. You're going to work every day to get better, to work hard, to train and be prepared for the next thing. So then I kind of said, all right, I got them talking about that, which I thought was interesting. So it was almost the same answer again and again and again and again. And I said, all right. I said, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna say this on a live podcast or anything, but what surprised you in a negative way about the job? And the most common answer was, well, I thought it'd be busier, you know, and it's like, oh, okay, because like we put out videos and we talk, and they see on Facebook that like we're going to fires all the time and we're going to incidents all the time. And I think you think like, okay, I'm going to do those things all the time. Well, the Cherry Hill Fire Department is doing those things all the time, but there's 18 companies, there's 6 companies times 3. Probably only 1 or 2 of them are going to be, on a lot of those incidents. 2 or 3 companies at most are going to be on a lot of those incidents. So, it's Murphy's Law. Whatever shift you're on is the one that doesn't have all the fires. You can go to any fire department, in America, and I'm on B shift, and C group is hitting it with fire. Yeah. Whatever, like that's always what it's going to be, and you're always on the wrong shift. And it's you try to company. You're always on the wrong company. You're on the wrong platoon. You're on the wrong side of town, whatever it is. Or you took the day off. The amount of I know my crew for a while loved when I took the day off, because that's the days we had fires. Overtime boss, they went to fires, and overtime bosses, not me. Mm-hmm. And so, but how do you explain that to guys like, hey, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. We're going to, in the Cherry Hill Fire Department, especially like our fire academy, our recruit academy, which we do for about 10 weeks, it is tough. We don't apologize for that. Whether you got to fire one, you got to fire one, you can come from another department. You could have every cert in the world. You're going through our fire academy, and you're doing PT, and you're going to do more physical hands-on training than you've ever done in your life, again and again and again and again. A lot of reps, a lot of academics. You're going to be, tests. There's going to be a lot thrown at you. It's going to be exhausting. And that 10 weeks is going to end, and you're going to be miserable for a good 10 weeks. And the minute that 10 weeks ends, you're going to miss all that. All right. Yeah. But you're also going to be amped up, and you're going to think, because in the fire academy, you fought 500 fires, in our 10 weeks, that's what every day is going to be like. And now, like this, you go from, you were in a sprint for 10 weeks. Yeah. And now you're in a marathon. Now you're in a, now you got 25 years, 30 years, and you got to learn how to pace yourself. You got to physically take care of yourself, mentally take care of yourself. You got to keep your skills sharp, and you got to do that in an environment where all of those things that you just got jammed down your throat for 10 weeks again and again and again and again, every discipline under the sun, now that's all spread out. And, you may not have some of these incidents for real, for years. One of my friends who retired a year or so ago, Pat Patterson at Cherry Hill Fire Department. Pat was on our hazmat company almost his entire career, if not his entire career. I think he was in year 24 before he finally was on a run that he wore a level A suit at a real incident. Yeah. And here's a guy that, we have a busy hazmat company. Like our guys cover the entire county. But just how often are you truly in a level A suit as a hazmat tech?
I've been a hazmat tech since I was 18 years old. And
how many times have you operated?
I've been in a true level A situation twice. Twice.
So, these are things, and I get it when you're somebody who, you just went through a 10-week academy, you're amped up, you're ready to go, you're in the best shape of your life. You're young, you're fired up. And you just want to test your skills. And now, you go from sprinting, to have to be at a marathon pace. And I think that's where, I know last week you had Jeremy on, and Jeremy's real big at talking about kind of the legacies and how do you bridge the gap. Again, he's talking about bridging gaps between the young and the old guys, and that's kind of where some of that importance of how do you have, your people with 10, 15, 20, 25 years on a job, be able to explain to the guys what 1 or 2, you take the enthusiasm of those things. Like I've actually, I say, like, our fire department, the morale and the energy level, when you put 23 new people into a 90 something firefighter organization, you put 23 of them new, and even the ones, but like we have 8 or 10 or more that only came on 2 or 3 years before them. Like a quarter of the fire department is, got like under 3 years on. Well, yes, there's some challenges for that. And as as a company officer, as a senior person, there's challenges there, but there's also it's opportunities. Like these guys and gals want to work. They want to go to fires. They want to go to incidences. they're having fun at work, and it's kind of reinvigorating, I think, for a lot of us.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think, like, again, we're talking about hiring here. We're going to hire another double-digit amount of people, probably in late 2020, in the fall of 2025. I don't know how many yet, because it'll be based on on openings and budgets and things like that. But I mean, we're going to hire another double-digit amount of people, and it's just mind-boggling to think, like, a year from now,
Crazy.
we're going to have another influx.
Yeah.
And it's great, and it's great, and the caliber of people that we've been hiring is it puts pressure on me. I'm like, I got to keep up with these people. Like, they're smarter than me, they're way fitter than me, they're faster than me. They got more skills than me. Like, I have to raise my game to keep up with them. Yes, I have 28 years of experience, which I'm gonna push back on them as much as I can. But also, I don't want to get in their way. They're enthusiastic. They're complaining that they're not going on enough fires, that they're not going on enough runs. Like, okay, how do I challenge, as a company officer, as a senior guy, how do I channel that into productive things, so that when at 5 a.m. we have to go to the neighboring county and show up first due at a building that we didn't even know existed, that I have no doubt that crew is going to operate, hands down 100%. And it's really, it's really fulfilling when that happens. And like I said, I got my last run I went on was that one. We're back in. I think our whole crew's in again tomorrow. So I don't know. I feel like I've been all over the place in this conversation, but
no, I love it. I
keep trying to bring it back to recruitment, because that's that's the position that that's where we're at right now. And hopefully some of this insight that I've been given about the Cherry Hill Fire Department and my experience there, get some people maybe interested in finding out more. And check out our website, cherryhillfire.org. Check out our social media sites. And there's ways you can get a hold of me. You can email me, jaleski@chfd.org.
And I will. I'll post that in the show notes.
That's my work email, and you can hit me up there.
I've been posting the flyer on my different social medias.
Yes, I saw that. Thank you very much. That's how this whole kind of conversation started.
Well, let's get into the Jersey questions.
Yes, the important stuff.
Number 1, is it pork roll or Taylor ham?
So I am a Middlesex County native, but I am a Mercer County resident. All right. So I live in Robbinsville. That's where I am right now, in my basement of my house. Even though I look like I'm in a kitchen, I'm in the basement. And I technically have a Trenton zip code. All right. So I really don't have, I know this is not a popular answer. I don't have an opinion. There is no wrong answer. Okay. So my grandmother, who was from Elizabeth, used to always refer to it as Taylor ham. Okay. My parents, who were from Middlesex County, always referred to it as pork roll. I'm a pork roll guy, but I'm not offended when you call it Taylor ham. In Mercer County, you can walk into a local butcher shop and they make their own. So I just look at it that we're blessed. That we have it, that we in New Jersey, pretty much from Cape May to Hohokus, can walk into any deli in any town and order a pork roll, egg, and cheese, with salt, pepper, and ketchup, and walk out happy. And the other 49 states can't say that.
All right. Next question. Oh, a very, very politically put, by the way.
Yeah.
I think that might be the most political answer I've got.
I live in pork roll. In fact, it's upstairs. I would add. I have a Trenton. So the alter ego. I'm not a baseball guy, but I live.
The Trenton Thunder, the Trenton pork roll,
and it's so great. Like minor league baseball's. You buy a ticket for $9 and you buy a beer for $3.50. And yes, their alter ego is the Trenton pork roll. So I have a Trenton pork roll baseball hat upstairs.
That's awesome.
I wear. So,
all right.
What's next? What do you got next?
Next question. Who's got the best pizza?
So again, I arguably live in potentially the greatest pizza neighborhood in maybe all of the United States. Right. I don't know, unfortunately over time, the Chambersburg, the neighborhood in Trenton has sort of dissipated, and they've come out largely into the suburbs. So they're in Hamilton, they're in Robbinsville, here where I live. So within the closest pizzeria to my home is Di Lorenzo's, which like Barstool, El Presidente has that in his top 10 pizza places on earth. That is the closest pizza place to my house. I do like Di Lorenzo's. We don't go there very often. We never get takeout from there. If we want Di Lorenzo's, you've got to go there and eat. Now, I do say, my line when you bite into Di Lorenzo's, you want to smack your mama. Like, that's how good their pizza is. All right. And but I don't usually crave it. All right. But when I'm there, I'm very happy. And we bring visitors there. Visitors come and they want to go there. So I also have Papa's. So Papa's is the oldest, I think, continuously operated pizza joint in the United States. That's in my neighborhood too. That's in walking distance of my house. We prefer Papa's. But our go-to place is, and if you know him from social media, is Sally Slices. There's a place called Marcello's, and his son Sal is this huge like TikTok and Instagram guy, got millions and millions of followers. That's our go-to like neighborhood pizza joint. But I say the place I crave. So I grew up in Sayreville, and Scorantino's Harbor Lights, which I got forced to go as a little kid when I was in Perth Amboy, and then I lived right up the block from when I lived in South Amboy. That's probably the only pizza I ever crave. A sausage pizza from Scorantino's in South Amboy.
All right. Do you go to the beach or you go down the shore?
This is going to be my one unpopular thing. I don't go to either. I'm not a Jersey Shore guy. I never have been. We do go to the beach though. So we go to the beach. We usually go to like Asbury Park because it's a straight line from here. So we go to the beach. I think we lost you again. I'm on here alone. So maybe I'll get to welcome you back. Let's see. I'm going to text message you. I wonder if I'm still on. Nick, we lost you. All right.
So
he's back. He's back. See?
Damn internet.
So I'm a beach guy.
Okay. Beach of choice.
Well, we go to Asbury Park.
Okay.
And I think it's a straight line from kind of Robbinsville. And I tend to be able to find street parking. I love the beer hall that's there in Asbury Park, which I don't know if it opened. I know they got flooded out last year, and I know it was closed for a while. I don't know it's back up. But that's kind of, we're running to the beach for the day. We tend to go there. My wife likes Long Branch, which I think is a pain in the ass because it's tough to park and very expensive to park. But we go there. And,
the handsome Palumbo, he used to lifeguard in Long Branch.
Oh, I did not know that. I did not know that. Right. I was a pool. I was like a single A lifeguard. I was a pool lifeguard. Yeah, I played single A lifeguard ball.
See, they used to have. So our sister is 2 years older than me, 2 years younger than him. They used to have battles because she was a pool lifeguard. Who the real lifeguard was?
Yeah, I don't know. I lifeguarded I think for 5 summers. I lifeguarded in a giant London Terrace, which is in Old Bridge, giant garden apartment complex, and the typical, a lot of immigrants that live there, a lot of transplants from the inner city live there, a lot of people who couldn't swim. So we regularly were in the water, like regularly pulling people out of the water. I always tell people I'm a rare lifeguard that actually had to respond to a stabbing at the pool one day. A couple kids fighting with box cutters, and
All
right at
right.
the pool, and they were like regulars. They were like kids that were there like every day who were like friendly with us, and they got into a fight, and next thing you know, they're stabbing each other with box cutters. And
Wow.
so yeah, so I don't have any surf rescues under my belt, but I'm gonna bet your brother doesn't have a stabbing at
No,
his job site. So I had that
no.
as a 17 or 18-year-old kid.
I think his claim to fame was he was one of those competitive lifeguards. He did like the competitions.
Well, I mean, that's good, and that's a tough job. It's a tough job.
Mitch Buchanan.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
all right. So this might be the most controversial question. Does
Central
Central
Jersey.
Jersey really exist?
Yeah, I'm in it right now. All right,
Okay.
and I don't know. I mean, I will subscribe to the 195 thing just
So
because
where that's the second part of that question. Where are you
it's
drawing your
sort of
borders?
easy. So the tricky thing is, so like my parents had lived in Lacey, and like
Okay.
Lacey does not identify as South Jersey. Pretty much everybody in Lacey, I think, is from northern New Jersey.
Yeah.
So like I don't know if the line is straight. The line kind of curves down. Certainly once you get past like Lacey, not far past that, you're definitely in South Jersey. But on the West Coast, it's a little vague. Like I'm gonna say, any people here where I live, we will fight you that we live in Central Jersey. And the northern Jersey barrier, I think, is gray. Like I grew up literally like at the base of the Driscoll Bridge. I mean, my volunteer fire company covers the bridges.
Yeah.
For anyone who says anything south of the Driscoll Bridge is South Jersey, they're out of their minds, because like
Yeah.
no one in Sayreville is gonna, John Bon Jovi is not gonna tell you that he is from South Jersey. So you're out of your mind, So where's the northern barrier? I kind of put it like maybe Route 78, like the Newark Airport area is kind of the zone where you shift from central,
Okay.
kind of Elizabeth. Elizabeth maybe is the kind of capital, of central New Jersey. And then immediately north of that is North Jersey. And then, yeah, I'll accept 195 just because it's easy. I just don't know where on the East Coast it ends. So I do tell my Eagles loving coworkers that that clearly the toothbrush must have been invented in South Jersey, because if it was invented
Otherwise,
anywhere
it'd
else,
be teeth
it'd be
brush.
called the teeth brush. All right. So I tell that to my
I
Eagles
love it.
fans, coworkers.
I love it.
So,
All
so what
right.
else?
Next question. Who were some of your mentors?
So I guess, obviously, my parents were mentors. My parents weren't part of the fire service or anything like that, but they they were great to have around growing up. Being in the fire service, I'll kind of go through some people, and I'm scared to death that I'm going to miss some people. But starting in Sayreville, like one of the biggest mentors, and the Sayreville guys are all going to text me, making fun of me. But Dan Martin was kind of the backbone of my company in Melrose. He did almost 30 years on the Jersey City Fire Department. I've never met anybody who loves the fire service, more than him. Here's a guy that a lot of us who I think could have gotten turned off, by just some of the stupidity that went on in that volunteer world, or at least in the Sayreville Fire Department. If Danny was there, like you were going to learn something, you were going to work, you were going to get your hands on things. And I learned a lot from there. Like you've got to engage people like in that hands-on thing. Like people who really want to be firefighters want to work. Some guys want to wear the blue t-shirt and or sit in a recliner or whatever. Fine. But if people really want to be firefighters, want to get their hands on stuff. And
Absolutely.
Danny was a guy, you're going to get behind a lit engine. We're going to go out and do something today. We're going to pump, we're going to use tools, whatever. So he was a guy that from the minute one that I think kept enthusiasm up. And we have a pretty good roster of guys that came out of my volunteer firehouse, that are career firefighters, many with ranks, from a battalion chief in the FDNY to captains in Newark to North Hudson guys, Jersey City guys. And I think a lot of us were influenced, by Danny. Other guys that, I volunteered with, just good guys, George Gavin, Bob Lasco, guys that were chiefs and, are still my friends and just good people. Loved going to fires, loved being on a fire truck. Funny guys, like guys that just made you also learn, the social aspect of the fire service. Like I said, I used to treat the firehouse, the volunteer firehouse was therapy for me. That was leaving my high pressure media job, and you walk in the firehouse and like, is somebody going to dump a bucket of water on your head, or is like what hijinks are you stepping into, or you're immediately going to get attacked or something,
Yeah.
and like, but that's important, like that kept you wanting to come back and kept you, socially engaged. So some of those guys, in Cherry Hill, it's a bunch of guys. I mean, I the 3 chiefs that we have now, and I'm not sucking up to them because I'll tell them to their face now that they pay me to be upstairs sometimes doing recruitment, that some stuff that we and they do suck. But, Tim McGeady, who is our assistant chief, was my first captain. And I try to approach a lot of the things I do in the firehouse the way he did when I worked for him. A lot of guys at work that I learned things from a union perspective. Tim Shannon was our union president. He's retired now. Jimmy Lyons drives me nuts, but he works in my firehouse as a fireman. He's our union president now. We just a lot
He's
of guys.
in the chat tonight, I think.
He probably is. He's probably, although it's 9:30. It's got to be his bedtime. I got to see Joe Lusner, who was my senior man on my crew and retired a year ago. He just so happy that picture that you put up from us from the fire. He took. I came outside and I'm like, who's this guy like with the hood over his head? And it's Joe. He's out at 6:30 in the morning in Mapleshade, helping us on the side road. So there's just a lot of guys, a lot, one thing I've always found like is people like, I'm not a big like Brunacini guy. He's an Oklahoma State guy and stuff, but the whole like fight fires aggressively and be nice, those are kind of Brunacini's like 2 rules. Like people who do the job aggressively but are nice to each other and nice to the public, like that's how I try to approach the job. I've got a lot of mentors in the union world. Rob Beatty's been one of them. Him and I have become real close friends. He's assistant chief or deputy chief at North Plainfield. But I've done a lot of union work with him. I got to work under Don Marino at the PFNJ. When I first got brought in, I worked under him, and again, a guy that drove you nuts because he's a micromanager, but man, a guy that would give you a shirt off his back. So I mean, follows in that rule, like live aggressively but be really nice. Like that's Donnie, and so there's a bunch of guys in that realm that have been mentors. And I try to I try to keep an open mind. I love my coach. I go to a gym. Like I love my coaches there. Like, anyone who's bringing it every day. Like if I'm going to something and you're bringing it, 100%, that's motivating me. That's inspiring me. That's making me trying to be better. And then when I'm at work or wherever I'm home, my kids or whatever, it's going to help me, hopefully be better around them. I mean, my wife, Karen is great. She works harder, I think, than I do. Her and her family and, my family are great influences.
Awesome. All right. Next question. Proudest achievement or accomplishment?
That's a good question.
I know, right? I get a lot of people with that one.
I mean, I can give the canned answer. I'm proud. I'm in my basement in my beautiful home in this great town that I live in with my wife and my kids. And my kids are great, and they make me laugh and challenge me and surprise me and all those things. So I mean that's obviously the first answer. When it comes to the fire service, I've definitely, my journey has not been, every way it's gone has not been what I thought it was going to be. It's fascinating to me that like April will be 28 years of stepping onto a fire truck. Like in some ways, like I feel like I've been doing this 28 months, it's still like new. There's still new challenges, and there's still like, I still like going to work, am I slower than I used to be? Absolutely. But like, I still like doing this, and I still like taking on challenges. And I think, you know, if when it's all said and done, like if I look back and say, all right, I moved the football, you know, this much down the field. If I positively influence my crew, if our actions positively influence someone in the public, which I think has happened, you know, dozens and dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of times. And then maybe if some of this other work that I do with communications and politics and strategic campaigns, if that moved the football, you know, one yard down the field, I'm happy, you know, like I didn't need to reinvent the wheel, you know, you know, I'm going to leave the fire service, and I think not need, you know, I don't think I'm going to be one of those guys that can't hang it up, you know, like I'm going to feel like I did what I came to do, and
Job well done.
Job well done. Like hopefully
Complete.
still have my mental and physical health, and then move on to something else, you know, and it's crazy to think that that's not all that far away.
It is, right? It's crazy.
You know, it's crazy. But I'm going to be 50 in a couple days.
Good for you.
You know, as when I got hired, our chief, Bob George, I do remember this. He said, "This is a young man's game," is what he told us on maybe our first day on the job in Cherry Hill, and he wasn't lying. Bob's a mentor too. That's a name I should bring up. You know, he was a guy. He's only the chief for the first couple of years I was on a job, but I'm not sure if in my direct experience, if I you know, you can name the Vinnie Dunns and the John Normans and the Brunacinis, like in the grand scheme of the fire service, who are true game changers. Yeah. But as far as people in organizations that I've been in, hands down, I mean, there's that dude, you know, that dude rewrote the book. Like that dude set the bar that we try to live up now in the Sayreville Fire Department. Which sometimes we don't even know where that bar is sometimes. He set that bar, and he's still running he's a volunteer in Haddonfield, you know, in the town next door. And it's funny seeing him, you know, on a fire truck still, you know, sometimes usually driving, but sometimes the officer. And I'm like, you know, you are our chief, and you built this place and really thought outside the box in a way that in New Jersey, at least, you don't see. And so to have built the fire department kind of from scratch in a short period of time, that I think has the reputation and the operational, you know, proficiency that we have. I think if there was one person that was more influential in all that, it's Bob. And I mean that's another mentor, I guess I could say.
Absolutely. All right, last question, and I'll let you get back to your life.
Yes.
What advice do you have for the fire service?
What advice? You know, again, I mean, for members in the fire service, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You will be sprinting at times, and you need to be prepared to sprint at any time at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever. But this is a marathon, and you know, take care of yourself, physically take care of yourself, mentally take care of yourself, emotionally take care of yourself. And one thing I tell the young guys in the fire department, I was getting a text, my good friend Rob Luft, who's literally one of my favorite people in the fire department. You know, he made
a question earlier.
Did he? What did he ask?
Or a comment earlier.
Get after it. See, he's that dude. He's probably in bed now, but he might be on duty.
Well, not if he's texting you.
I didn't check, but you know, I just tell Rob, if I had one bit of advice to him, you know, as I said, there's a whole world out there. Go see it, you know? And so that's another thing I try to tell like our young members, like, and this harkens back to where if I've learned one thing, if I leave with a different perspective, it is that this is a job about people. It's not a job about physical, you know, or it's not about science. It's about social science, not about physical science. And if you want to do that part of the job well, you got to learn about people. You got to travel. You got to read. You got to listen to podcasts and listen to things that are not involving the fire service. You got to learn about history. You got to learn about politics. You know, I've been to all 50 states. I've been to about 20 something countries, maybe more. It changes the way you look at things. And I think it helps you when you're in a place. If you're going to work in New Jersey, you're going to deal with diversity. Okay.
Yeah.
That is one thing that, no matter where you are in New Jersey, you're going to deal with people from, that look different than you, that believe in different religions than you, that are different than you. You have an obligation, if you're in the fire service, to have some sort of understanding of those people, or to be
Yep.
able to, serve their needs. And
Or at least respect. At least respect it.
well, yeah, I think I should say that's a given. You should respect everybody. It's like Bruno saying, do things aggressively, but be nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think you need to go a little deeper than just be nice. Try to get some understanding. You go out, see the world. It will change the way you see things.
100%.
Go get formally educated. Go to training. Like, go to training in a different state and see the way guys do things. Go to FDIC. Go to get involved in the union and meet people from different places. Because you will learn so much, and then you can bring that back, and you can take the pieces that fit into the environment that you work in, whether you're a career person, you're a volunteer, whatever, and you can positively impact that place. Because otherwise, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to keep making the same mistakes again. So if you can learn from other people's mistakes, or learn from other people's successes, and then you replicated that, well, then now, then you move the football down the field. And so that's my advice always. That's my advice for our young guys always. It's like, go do things on your day off. Like, don't just do the fire department, go see the world, go meet people, go learn about things, challenge yourself, and take care of yourself while you're doing that. Because this job can also be cruel.
Very.
I have incredibly close friends, who this job has mentally, challenged, and unfortunately, has significantly, career altering or ending, physically challenged. And you've got to be prepared for those things, and your family has to be prepared for those things. And you have to, every day you go out, you gotta have in the back of your mind that these things can happen. And you got to have your life built to be resilient enough to keep going if those things do happen.
100%. Jim, brother,
This is awesome.
Any shout outs? Anybody you want to say hi to? Anything?
No, they all make fun of me because they say I talk too much. So the fact that we've gone 2 hours and 11 minutes, I probably have 50 text messages telling me that I talk.
This might be one of my longest shows.
Jeremy's pretty long last week.
But you know what? It wasn't awkward. It wasn't like we were looking for trying to build conversation. It flowed. It doesn't feel like it's been 2.25 hours.
No, it went by quick. No, and again, I'm here to.
I feel like we could have gone another 2.
Let's go. I got to work tomorrow, but no, I mean, check out if you're, if anything I talked about the Cherry Hill Fire Department, or a career in the fire service, interests you, go to cherryhillfire.org. You can see the information about our hiring process. It opens up a little in a month, less than a month. It is, unfortunately, it's a very specific process. We only run it about every 3 or so years. So the windows to get in are narrow, but they're open. I am reachable on social media. You can find me at Jim Aleski, tends to be my handle across the board. My email at work is jaleski@chfd.org. If you have questions or anything, by all means, reach out. The fire department has assigned me to this, and I'm happy to get as many people, into the process as possible. And hopefully have lead them to 2+ hour long conversations with friends. All right,
brother. I'm going to put you in the backstage area.
All right. Very good.
Off air.
Thank you for what you do. This is it's obviously I'm an advocate of this kind of thing, and I'm honored to be asked to be a part of it.
Well, I am honored that you took time out to join me on my little podcast. When you're a media giant.
A giant, yeah.
You're like a real media giant, not just hey, I make.
I was smart enough to get out of the media business, and ride on a fire truck.
It's still there.
It is
still there.
I can't escape.
Good retirement for you.
No.
I'll be right with you. All right, everybody. That wrapped up another excellent run number 41 with Lieutenant Jim Aleski of the Cherry Hill Fire Department. And please, if you are liking the show, like, comment, share, subscribe, keep following. I'll see you next Thursday. Go to Cherry Hill's website. Check them out on social media. Get ready to get registered for the Cherry Hill Fire Test. See you next week. Stay safe, everybody.